Good morning, listeners. My name is Micah.
And my name is Josiah.
And welcome to the Morning Ponderings podcast.
It is a conversational podcast between two people who are basically idiots, and we're just gonna figure out some of the possibilities of life so that empathy for others can flourish.
We're gonna keep that. We're gonna keep that one.
Are we gonna do that one?
I mean, hey, self-deprecation is just another form of flattery, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's fine. I kind of stole that from Believe It or Not, where they begin all their podcasts with like, "Hey, we just want to let everybody know we don't know anything. We just Google this like right before we start."
Hey,
so like,
well,
and actually, I haven't Googled anything. I haven't studied determinism since like high school. So let's
nice.
go.
I've not really either. I mean, I just know what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
But before we get to before we
roll the topic.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I've been derailing Micah for like 8 minutes. So.
Well, we hadn't even started. We've had like 10 minutes of just total derail. This blooper reel is going to be like 10 minutes long. Just kidding. Well, it probably won't be. But anyway, how's your morning, Josiah?
It's going good. You know, I actually worked this morning. I got up before the sun came up, just like any idiot does. I'm kidding. I don't know. I had to do a Saturday morning. We're trying to convince my boss to stop making us do Saturday mornings. I only had 35 orders to process, which like isn't a lot. And really the point of it is just to make Monday easier.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. But I got some stuff done. I cleaned up my desk a little bit, got my returns done, which was nice. So
nice. That's good.
Yeah. I don't remember what we were talking about. How's your morning?
Yeah. It's been good. I have not been awake for very long. But it's good. It's like the first day after my quote-unquote weekend because I only have weekdays off because I work in retail. So today is going to be basically my Monday. But, you know, that's all right. It was nice to have a couple of days off to get a bunch of housework done. There's just like so much to do at the house that we're working on. Well, really, it's our house that we just haven't moved into yet because we're just working on it.
This is my house. Yeah, absolutely.
It's my house, just covered in dust.
I'm bad at the Borat voice.
Yeah. Learning a bunch of new skills on last night I was just like mudding and taping, which is like after you hang drywall, you got to like fill in the cracks, you know, and all the in between. And so, yeah, I was doing that for a while last night and trying to get everything prepped so that we can paint soon because the kitchen is like the ugliest yellow I've ever seen. And
yeah, I'm not going to lie. Your kitchen just kind of in general doesn't. Did you get the drywall put up in the kitchen?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That looked like it was going to be really hard. I've been to his house, everybody. We live like 20 minutes away from each other.
Yeah, I mean, it took a while, and you know, I didn't really know what I was doing, so I had some friends who knew how to do it, and then also my father-in-law is very handy and has done all this stuff, and so he did a lot with me too.
That's awesome. I've put up drywall before, but not in a complex. It was like just wall. Like there wasn't anything. Like you had a window sill to deal with and like outlets and stuff. I haven't done that before. I just like it was just putting up drywall on like flat wall, which is not super difficult. What you did looked like it was way more complicated.
It's just a lot of measuring. As long as you measure right and just like, I don't know, cut it at the right places, then you're fine. It's not that hard.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I cough a lot during this podcast. I've been infected with asthma.
Asthma.
It's getting cold outside and my lungs are just not wanting any of it. So
yeah. Well, hey.
I did get like pharyngitis or whatever it is when like your throat closes up, and I'm taking a steroid to like open up my throat because it felt like it was a pain not dissimilar to swallowing tortilla chips without chewing them.
Oh, nice.
That was basically what it felt like. Now it kind of feels like I went to a really good concert. Like that's the
Okay.
kind of pain that I have.
It's a little better.
So it's much better. I can swallow things now, and I don't like wince every time I do.
Yikes. Yeah, I do not envy
But yeah,
that.
it's not Rona. I went to the doctor, and they were like, you obviously don't have the Rona because I'm vaccinated and all that jazz.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I need to get my booster, and I already got hers. And
same. Not same as in got. I need to get it.
Yeah.
Because I'm about 6 months, which I think is when you're supposed to get the booster.
Is that right? Oh. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I am too. I just need to do it on a day where my next day is off, because last time I got the vaccine, I like freaking got like sick for a day. I did not feel good. But then I was better. I was just like totally fine after one day of just not feeling well.
Yeah, I remember feeling kind of feverish the day after I got my vaccine, my second shot. It was not fun. But you know what? Worth it.
Yeah, better than getting the Rona, or at least getting it worse if you do get it, because I haven't got it.
Right. I actually am like in a risk category because my lungs are so like bad at their job.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
I have like incredible lung capacity from like playing clarinet in band and then immediately doing like 2 hours of soccer practice all throughout high school.
Yeah.
The problem is I also have asthma, and instead of like using the gifts that God gave them, they're just like shrinking all the time. So
They're just shrinking.
it's like the like stereo, like the archetype of the big soft guy in like the 5-man band, like the guy that's huge and strong but like literally won't even swat a fly. Like that's basically what my lungs are.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. We can all have that mental image of Josiah's lungs.
Yeah, it's just it's like copy and paste the big guy from Mulan inside my chest.
Nice.
And I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm like this.
Hey, it's entertaining at least. I hope people find it entertaining.
I hope so. I'm usually met with mixed results when I go rambling like that.
Hey, that's all right. I guess you all probably at this point have noticed that Christian's not here. You know, it's hard for us all to align our schedules. It's like trying to, I don't even know, trying to wrangle chickens or something like that. I was trying to think of a good analogy, and that was the only thing that came to my mind. But anyway.
I did offer to let Micah and Christian record this morning without me because I wasn't going to be available when Christian was. But I think Christian's just trying to be a nice guy and like let me hop in on it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But
But
so,
yeah, fear not, he'll be back, obviously. And he's got some ideas for some episodes. And so we're excited to see, for those future things coming. But for now, we will hop into our topic.
So today, I had an idea while I was listening to Micah talk about like free will and stuff. And me and Micah actually disagree on this one, I believe.
Maybe.
I am a determinist, and I think that Micah is like pro free will or what. I don't know what any of that means.
I don't know.
I don't remember what. I forgot what the. No, I don't know what free will is.
Nice.
I forgot what the opposing view is called. Is it just like the free will position or whatever? I don't know.
I don't know.
But basically, like, I believe that everything that happens is just kind of like was always going to happen, and Micah does not. But I also want to be fair. Like, I don't go around thinking this about the world all the time. Like, I don't, like, when somebody gets, like, murdered or whatever, I'm not like, oh, that was always going to happen. Like, obviously, you can still make society better and stuff. Like there's no, I behave as if I have free will because it's really not useful to go around being like, oh, I don't have free will, so whatever, you know?
Yeah.
I just, like, as an intellectual fact, I guess, I just don't really see it as, like, I don't know. I see it as a lot more complicated, I think, than it may come across when I like get really contrarian on Micah at some point during this. But
Yeah.
but
Oh
I
my
do
gosh.
act as if I have free will, and I think that people do like make their decisions. I just, the determinist view is that like the decisions were always going to happen, so it's just kind of like, yeah. I
I
don't know. What do you think, Micah?
Yeah. So I just Googled determinism, and basically it's what Josiah said, but just to give a like little clean definition, determinism is the philosophical view that all events are determined completely by previously existing causes. So another definition kind of says that everything is ultimately determined by causes external to the will. So that is somewhat, yeah, like you can't have free will because everything was already determined. So you're not necessarily like making reality as you go. Like reality was already like set out in kind of
Right,
a,
yeah.
yeah, like a cause and events
Yeah.
that is already going to happen. And so any choice you make is just falling into that line. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, basically. Like it's a bit depressing to like to hear about it. It's not like a fun, like you don't think that to cheer yourself up. It to me it's explicitly like an intellectual exercise. I don't like I said, I don't think it's useful to just go around behaving as if you have no free will, because you do make choices. It's just those are choices that you were always going to make based on like the
Interesting.
initial split of the universe and everything that came before, like the way that
Interesting.
atoms collided and all that. It's just, yeah. So like that's kind of where I come from, but I do want to be clear that like I am not trying to depress people, and I don't want people to think that like they're not in control of themselves, because
Yeah.
I think it's more complicated than that.
Well, don't worry. I'll reel us back over.
Oh
if
yeah,
we
for sure.
get too far.
Why don't you talk about? Oh, I just bumped my mic, so you're gonna
It's
want
fine.
to.
It's fine.
I'm just gonna redo that. Why don't you talk about your viewpoint, Micah?
Maybe before we get to that, we could just talk about determinism a little bit and some of the implications of what that would mean and why you think that is true.
Sure,
Because, like,
yeah.
I think to some extent, I don't like fully think that there's. How do I say this? In my position, which we should definitely talk about later after we kind of talk a little bit about determinism, but I don't think that free will is 100% free. Like, I think everybody has varying degrees of free will, just in the sense of like, if you go to the store in America, just go to a grocery store, you have the free will to choose, like, I don't know, 100 different types of cereal, right? But you only have those 100 types of cereal. They're like, maybe other countries have other types of cereal. And so, like, while you do have the free will to choose that cereal, you do not have the freedom to choose things that are not there, right? And so, like, to some extent, your free will is limited. But anyway,
Well, yeah. We're not. We hold on. How do I do Odin's voice? We are not gods, or something like
yes.
that.
Oh, okay.
From the first Thor movie.
We'll get more into
Yeah,
that because
no.
like I have a lot of thoughts on
Hey,
like
if you want to get into manufactured consent, that can be fun too.
okay.
We got what? We got like another hour on this bad boy. Let's get into it all.
Oh gosh. Okay. So to talk about determinism, I feel like there are a lot of interesting implications to that. For one, it's depressing. It's like, oh, okay, so
It is. Yeah.
what
That's why I
actually?
don't often talk about it.
I guess like what actually matters if everything's already determined? Like how does that factor into like even the meaning of like finding meaning in life and like in your decisions and like even celebrating things? Like what is the point? What's the point of all that?
It doesn't. Okay, so like you're taking the like the nothing matters viewpoint as in like the depressing way, but there's
Yeah.
also the nothing matters in the happy way, in which like, okay, it's not fun to just live your life as if nothing matters and just be like depressed about that and like there's no point to anything. It's more fun to be like nothing matters and there's no point to anything and being like absurdly pro good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like instead of nothing matters, so I'm gonna sit on my couch, it's nothing matters, so I'm gonna go like protest on Wall Street or something like that, because
Yeah. Okay.
you know, like the consequences of this are just kind of like fading and whatever, you know, stuff like that. Like I
Sure.
think that like obvious like determinism isn't the basis for an entire like personality or philosophy. Like it's just a component of the universe that you can choose whether or not to speculate on. But like at the end of the day, like the philosophies that we hold don't rule our lives.
Yeah.
They kind of do. This philosophy in particular should not rule your life.
I hope not. Goodness.
This philosophy can be like interesting to think about, but at the end of the day, like it's not going to really add that much to your life. So that's why I don't talk about it a ton. It's more like just you can find your purpose and meaning. And I mean, purpose and meaning are just so weird. I think that you and me already talked about that Abraham Piper video, not on the podcast, where he's discussing like the fact that meaning is kind of a man-made thing anyway.
Yeah.
And because it's a man-made thing, it means about as much as everything does under a deterministic viewpoint. So like just
Sure.
the idea of creating your own meaning can just be kind of separate from that, and you can just like choose to live that way because it's much more useful and more fun to
Because why
live
not?
that way. Yeah, exactly. Because why not? Like, why would you not live like that? Especially if nothing matters, why would you not behave as if things do matter? You know?
Right. I think like what I feel with determinism is that like I hear what you're saying and like okay, it's like nothing matters, so why not just like live crazily because everything's already determined anyway. But at the same time, like I feel like that does like kind of rob you of your, I guess, the power of your decisions, because if it's already determined beforehand, I feel like it's just hard to like be happy in a decision you've made, or even like celebrate different things because it's like, well, that was just already going to happen. Apparently it was already just
No,
like
I
set
can get
out to
that.
happen.
Everybody is absolutely free to just tell me that I'm like a depressing idiot. This is like I am not trying to turn anybody into a determinist. I don't care that much.
Oh, okay.
It's
That's
just
good.
like I heard you talk about it and I was like, this would be a fun discussion. So like first
yeah.
of all, absolutely, like if you feel like that takes away power from your like life decisions, just turn that, like just don't think about it or whatever. I don't
Yeah.
think about it most of the time.
And I guess that's how like a lot of philosophies work, is like whatever is like kind of working for you and like helps you get through life. Like I guess in your case it helps you.
Yeah.
You know,
At the
it's
end
like
of the day, I'm kind of a
yeah.
utilitarian where like if it doesn't add utility or like usefulness to your life, then like it doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
And so that's why with something like determinism, I can have it as like an intellectual thing, but like at the end of the day, utilitarianism kind of rules my philosophy, where like I will look at the consequences of actions to see like what creates the greatest good.
Yeah.
Barring any examples of like the really extreme examples that deontological people give, like if you could theoretically torture a child but like make everybody on earth happy and like live perfect lives, that's technically justifiable in a consequentialist sense. Like that doesn't we're not going there. So
Yeah.
it's just like trying to create the most good for the people around you is basically kind of where my main philosophy goes. And since determinism is like kind of a whatever, you know.
Yeah. So I guess like I feel like this is a very common critique on determinism, is like if everything is already determined, then like how can you ever hold people accountable for their actions? If
Yeah,
it was
okay,
just
I'm glad you asked.
you can't. Oh, okay.
I have thought about this for about 10 seconds, and I was like, wow, I'm going to say something really smart when he asks this question.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, no, but for real, I think it actually should change. Like, I think that one of the more useful things is changing the way that we view justice. Because if you
Yeah.
think about I'm going to talk about this. I'm also going to talk about David Bentley Hart's book, That All Shall Be Saved, which is a good book on universalism, which we are not talking about right now. But if you have hell anxiety, listen to that book on repeat. It is a solid takedown of like hell as a concept. But essentially, the conditions around somebody affect how they behave.
Yeah.
For example, in poor communities, people, like there's more crime generally in impoverished areas, and there's multiple reasons for that. There's not just one reason. One of those reasons one of the big reasons is crimes of necessity. People have to steal because they don't have enough money, or whatever, or they have to sell drugs or whatever because they need to make money somehow. Which actually selling drugs, like if you're a small time guy, that actually doesn't make you a whole lot of money. But like, stealing and stuff like that, like all of that is crimes of necessity. There's also like pipes that were laid back in the Civil War era that all have lead in them that factually like destroy people's brains. And things like that. So like taking those things into account, those like external factors towards somebody's free will, like it reduces the amount of blame that I put on somebody who has committed a crime. And it like changes the way that I look at that because I start looking at the external factors towards them. I think it also like it can also lead to more reformative justice where instead of just like punishing the bad, it's more about changing the thing in the person and around the person to make things better.
Yeah, like looking at the environment that caused them or drove them to these decisions and then saying, how can we fix the environment?
Yeah, there's studies upon studies that like have discussed how this actually works. But I think that the way that that looks at justice is not because like I know that you're pro reformative justice, but like when you said that, you were kind of talking retributive justice because how do we hold somebody accountable for their actions? Like, and I get that retributive justice is like not always a bad thing. Like there are probably some people who really just, because of the atoms that formed at the beginning of the universe or whatever, are just like always going to be bad people. But like, but like I think that it leads more into considering like the external factors and not just blaming like the individual, because we obviously have like a world filled with evil. And so like examining the world as opposed to examining like just blaming the individuals, I think is more useful.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I don't that probably did sound like I was referring to like retributive justice, but I guess
that actually did sound kind of smart. I'm surprised that came out of my mouth.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. But even just in the sense of like, how do you, I guess, do anything to people who do wrong things? It's like, well, you were just already determined to do that. But I guess like,
I don't know. I mean, you were the person doing the punishment was already determined to do the punishment too. I mean, you can flip it both ways.
That's true.
When you start flipping everything around like that, it kind of stops mattering that much.
Yeah. I think, and I think that's where like I kind of like fall in the middle of like I agree that like environments will like drive people to certain things, and that's where I believe in like a limited free will, because like you are affected by your environment and what is around you, and so.
Right, you only have a certain number. Like what you were talking about with the cereal, like you only have so many things to choose from.
Yeah. And if somebody is like, I don't know, puts a bunch of sheets over a bunch of cereal, so now you only have two options, and they say you're not allowed to touch what's behind the sheets. Like, do you technically have free will to do that? Yeah, but like you've been limited even more by another factor. And so like I do agree with you that like there are external factors that do limit our free will and limit our choice. I don't think that, at least in my mind and my philosophy, that like helps me live life. It's like I don't think it completely takes away your agency and your free will to, like, I don't think everything is determined maybe. I think there's some mystery and whimsicalness to life, but
so that kind of gets into the David Bentley Hart thing that I mentioned earlier, which I don't think he's a determinist. I just really like his examination of free will, because he was taking down the argument that in order for us to have free will, we have to be able to like choose hell or something like that. Like in order for us to
Yeah.
freely love God, we have to be able to choose hell. He was taking down that argument.
Yeah.
But what his examination was that everybody's will in the end is to do good and improve their lives. Generally to improve, like they have things that they chase, like
Yeah.
somebody who robs a convenience store and somebody who buys a violin, maybe not somebody who buys a violin, somebody who robs a convenience store and somebody who buys dinner at a fancy steakhouse essentially have the same motivation and the same will, which is to eat.
Yeah.
That the circumstances around their choice are what affect what kind of choices they can make. In some cases, something like lying to somebody and hurting them can really be a motivation to keep them safe from something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even though it wasn't the right choice, the information that you had at the time, whatever your brain was considering, was that it was going to be better for you to just lie to them.
Yeah.
And then if they find out that lie, it hurts them. And it wasn't necessarily a good thing, but you were originally trying to do the good thing. So his belief is that ultimately we're all geared towards that divine good. But the material circumstances of the world and the information that we possess make it impossible for us to actually make free decisions. Because if we all had free will, then we would all freely choose the best option for us.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So his analysis of free will is so big brained that I cannot properly express it in this podcast. He is an incredibly intelligent person, and just infinitely more well studied than I am. But that analysis of free will has really stuck with me and kind of helped me. That coinciding with my deterministic philosophy has helped me analyze sociology, basically, and like how people make decisions, and kind of thinking of people as being better than like better than how other people see them.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
So yeah, what are your thoughts on that specific?
Yeah,
kind
no,
of
that
train of thought?
makes a lot of sense. And so I say we just like kind of dive into that. So let's swing over to the free will side. Because
sure thing.
this is, especially in our combined, even with Christian's upbringing, free will was like, that was the thing, right? That was the thing that you kind of, I don't know, like that it was held
if
in
you're
such
not
high
a dirty
esteem.
Calvinist.
What?
I'm kidding. I said if you're not a dirty Calvinist.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I'm
weird.
just
Like,
kidding.
yeah.
Bentley Hart had a lot of things to say about Calvinism. He was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway. Sorry.
Well, maybe we'll touch on that a little bit. But like, starting from like Genesis, like they'll always talk about how the fall was a product of God giving free will, right? The whole idea of putting the tree in there was so that Adam and Eve had the chance to choose to love God, or, choose to whatever.
Right.
That was a weird sound.
Sorry, that's Pearl in her. You're going to use my mic audio, right? Because she's doing that like in my earphone.
Oh, okay.
Hey, do you want to do that for the microphone? You want to snort?
Yep. I heard
know
it.
If it picked that up.
Yep.
You're so weird. Okay.
Anyway.
I'm sorry. Pearl's just being really needy.
Yeah. So, like I feel like that's like the foundation of so much Christian doctrine, is like the idea that you were given free will, and they use the story of Adam and Eve as an example of that. And then talk about how your ability to love God stems from your free will. And so like, that's why basically they will say like, it's okay that there's hell, is because like God is giving you the option to choose him and love him or not. Even though that consequence seems pretty extreme for that kind of a choice to love somebody. But
yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, love me, or you can go away forever and suffer forever.
Yeah.
And not everyone
One of
holds...
his points was like, in order to have free will, you don't have to have an option that's diametrically opposed to the other. Like,
Yeah.
I can have the choice to like pet my dog or not pet my dog, which are diametrically opposed, or I have like the option to like live with my dog or like kill it as opposed to give it to a shelter or something like that. Like, those are completely different choices.
Yeah.
Like,
and there could be
like,
other options. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of options that I could choose other than living with these sweet little things, Not that I would ever choose those things. It's just that Pearl's begging for my attention right now, and all I can think is dog.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Hey, that works though. That works. And so anyway, like I feel like that is such a big, like it's interesting. Like in Christian circles, like free will is like the thing. Like that's the thing that like is always said to be the reason for a lot of things. The reason for sin, the reason for hell, the reason for like all this different things. Like God has given you free will.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Calvinist, in which case it's like, well, God has already determined who's going and who's not.
Yeah.
And so like, but it's still your fault if you go to hell. It's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
I
Also,
don't know
Calvin
about that.
believed that God actually actively hates the people that he didn't choose.
Yeah. See, that's just,
Calvin was like, he was a kind of a messed up guy. Like, I don't know how anybody like took him seriously theologically. He was just like an angry person.
well, it's
Like, he must have just had so much hate for like so many people to believe that, you know?
yeah. Well, I feel like it's just another level of a superiority complex that if you think that you are one of the predetermined, then it makes you better than everyone else. And who doesn't
Right.
want to feel like they're better than everyone else?
So like the opposite of the message of the Bible.
Yeah, basically. To be fair, I have learned that modern day, I want to say neo-Calvinism is like not really what John Calvin himself would have agreed with, but I still
Yeah.
don't think he was a great guy. So
I think that most Calvinists today just have like mixed beliefs on things.
yeah,
Like they're not like true Calvinists. They just like lean more towards the God is in control side as opposed to the God allows free choice side.
yeah,
But they're not like it's created a lot of weird theology that like Calvin, he may have been wrong and possibly a giant jerk, but he was at least consistent. You know, his theology was consistent. A lot of the
Yeah.
theology today is just not consistent in regards to like the view on free will and hell and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like it runs into a lot of internal contradictions.
It does. Yeah, it does. And then whenever you draw it out to its kind of logical end, it's pretty depressing. And
Yeah, when you draw it to its logical end, you get Calvin, and that is like
Yeah.
bad.
it's not great. But anyway, like where was I going with this? So I feel like as you follow the train of like I guess evangelical logic on free will and start to go down, and then you get to the questions like, okay, but what about people like, let's say you've determined in Christianity, which like is most of Christianity, that if you don't believe in God, you go to hell, whatever hell is. Like, let's not even get into what because there's many views on hell. But it's like, what about people who have never heard of Jesus or like never had the chance, especially like one before Jesus came, and two, whenever it was still spreading, like for a long time, there were places that had never, like there's just no possible way that like the gospel
Yeah.
could have reached them. And so that's where things get muddy, and you have to start retroactively looking at the Bible and like saying, I think
Right.
this applies to that, even though maybe it didn't.
It's
Like,
where you can't get a cereal in China that is not available in the U.S. Like it's just not within your wheelhouse of free will.
right, yeah. And that's why like I think it's important to talk about limited free will, and like to some extent like that does fall into determinism of like you can't really blame people for like the environments that they were in. Like it wouldn't be fair.
Yeah,
like you need to
exactly.
you need to blame the environment they were in, not the person themselves. Because like yeah, people who were basically not in the Middle East for the first few hundred years would not have heard, well, I guess like, it became Europe, all of Europe pretty quick. But they would never have heard about this guy
Yeah.
named Jesus. And so like how could you justifiably say that like they deserve to go to hell? They didn't even have that choice. Like the cereal
I
was
don't
not there.
even remember like the mental acrobat. Yeah, it wasn't the cereal. They were out.
Out of the cereal,
They
darn it.
didn't have any. They didn't have any in the back.
Man, just need my off-brand Lucky Charms.
I don't even remember the mental acrobatics that I did to justify that kind of stuff when I was like a hyper conservative Christian debate boy.
Yeah. Oh, allow me. I can still
you
do the
remember
acrobatics.
because I remember the acrobatics of like, well, if you like observe the world, you can tell that there is a creator or whatever.
Yeah.
But then like which one?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
It's like a lot of cultures look at the universe and, are
then
like, I think there's something,
yeah, I guess, and then it's the knock and the door shall be answered, or what, like seek and you will find, and then it's like, but if that's true, wouldn't have God revealed himself like all over the world? Because
Yeah.
people were
Well,
looking and knocking
yeah.
on doors, and unless they're all right and Unitarianism is the thing, then like,
Yeah.
what say you? What is the mental acrobatic there?
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's so let me do some gymnastics for you.
Okay.
So to some of the things you said,
He's
like,
doing some really cool backflips, just so I know there's a podcast, but
yeah, there's like a triple twist in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Right now we'll just do some simple backflips, but so like a lot of people will then point to some stories in the Old Testament where someone like Rahab, who was in the city, was that the city of Jericho? I can't remember. There were some Israelites hiding out in a city.
don't remember.
In the Promised Land they were about to like conquer, and Rahab, having never heard of their God, really like welcomes them in, but then says like, oh, like, I believe in your God. It's like, well, how would she have known that? And they'll say, well, like, like God probably like kind of revealed himself to her, and like she made the right decision, I guess. And she was like an outsider, right? And so like
Yeah.
they would say, look, that's an example of it being possible for God to be revealed to people, even if they don't know who God is. And then maybe someone later on will tell them about who that is, or maybe that is it. So there's
Right.
that example. And then in the New Testament, people will point to things that Paul said. For example, I mean, honestly, just the first 2 chapters of Romans, like they'll say, well, that God has revealed himself. And this is in like Romans 1, 20, 118.
I don't know. You're
I'm
you're
gonna
the
pull it
pastor
up.
guy.
I'm gonna pull it
just
up.
I'm the studied philosophy while also studying theology guy, not the pastor guy. I did actually read the Bible once all the way through.
Oh wow,
that was fun.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pull it up so that people can at least like kind of follow along. I was right. It's Romans 1:20. So for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. And they'll be like, boom, right there. They're without excuse because God has revealed himself in the world. So if you don't, whatever, then like you have no excuse.
Right.
Boom, done.
Out of curiosity, what does the next verse say?
Oh yeah, that's a good
Because
question.
I hate just reading.
I agree.
I know that you know this, but like reading one verse is not an effective. Like if you're like, for anybody who's like following that, like is actually like still reading the Bible or like believes or whatever.
Yeah.
Like reading just one verse is not a good way to do Bible.
It's an absolutely horrible way.
Even reading just like one chapter sometimes is not enough. Like really,
No.
the whole thing has to be taken together.
Yeah.
As like a narrative.
Yeah, the Bible was
Yeah.
not written in chapters and verses. It was just written as a story. And
yeah,
this,
it has to be dissected at like multiple levels because it was also like theoretically canonized in a way that the whole thing makes sense together.
yeah,
We can get into discussions on that another time, but like,
well, somewhat. in
theoretically,
ways
the way that it works is that like it makes sense together. There's some things to wrestle with or whatever, but like you have to dissect it at many different levels. So like
Yeah.
just one verse, like when people throw down the one verse is like their smackdown. It's just super annoying because that's not how theology is done.
Yeah,
That's
well,
not
that's
how you form your theological opinions.
no, but that's what a lot of Theo bros will do. Is like all they,
Theo bros, I love that.
yeah, all they know what to do is just throw down one verse as if that proves everything. So the next verse, for anyone who wants to know, which gives a lot of hints into things just I was saying, it says, "For although they knew God, they neither glorified him nor gave him thanks, but their thinking became futile and foolish, and their hearts were darkened." So I think this is
So
where
he's talking about like specific people, not
Exactly.
just everybody.
And it's
Yeah.
like, this is what makes me mad, is like they'll take the one verse, create a whole theology around it, but then like in the next verse, it's like, oh, Paul is talking about a specific group of people. Maybe I should figure out what group of people he's talking about.
Right. He could be talking about like 10 people according to the context of that verse. Like,
And it could only apply to them. It's like, and
Yeah,
I get
exactly.
how they could say like, well, it was a broad statement that could be applied to many people. Maybe it could, but also Paul is talking to a specific group of people here. And no, though I'm
Right.
not a huge
But
fan
if you
of
are
Paul,
going to broadly apply a statement, like just do the logic on it. Like, does this statement apply generally? No.
yeah. Yeah. So then some people will still like start to argue about that and say like, yeah, but it's not fair. Like, how could God judge somebody who's never even heard about Jesus? If like that's the criteria, because once again, I don't think if there is a God, if there is an afterlife, I don't believe the criteria for getting in is um, having the right belief, quote unquote. Um,
Right.
so then you start arguing about that. It's like, well, how is that fair? So then Romans 2 actually, like, if people actually read a little further, somewhat talks about that. And I'm not going to read it all, but I'm just going to say what it does say is he kind of goes through different groups of people and is like, for people who have never heard of, or I guess never had the law. So he starts talking about like the Torah and stuff. Their law is on their heart. And so like, as long as they follow basically their conscience almost, then like that is their law. And so like God will judge them accordingly to that. But for the Jew who has the law, you are going to be judged according to the law. And kind of the whole point of all of that is what happens in Romans 3, which is like none of us do that. Like the people who have the Torah don't do it. The people who don't have it don't like can't live up to the standard. Which is where later he's like, but it doesn't matter because we're all like redeemed, basically, which people will then disagree on, which is like, whatever.
Right.
You can, whatever.
I think that Romans is where David Bentley Hart pulled one of his universalism verses, where he was basically like, I'm not going to be as funny as him, but the way that he worded it was just incredible. He was like, you know, when Paul mentions this, he has the option to tell everybody that he is speaking of an eternal conscious torment of hell. And he would be an absolute cretin to have not mentioned it in this verse.
Yeah. There's definitely some universal, I don't even want to say undertones because it's almost explicit in the book of Romans.
Yeah, there's like one verse that can be misconstrued as like eternal conscious torment as like the punishment in the afterlife. And then a ton of verses where it's like God will drag all of creation back to him, which implies like even like people who maybe like just were looking away or something like that. Like he doesn't care. Like he's just going to make everything right or whatever. So that's why I kind of like, like when we get into that kind of like people following their own law or whatever, you know, just like living, like doing your best, like everything will be made right in the end, because it gets it like if you think about it, like, if you just take like those few verses where he's talking about like the Jews have Torah and everybody else just has like their conscience, like, wouldn't it be better to just let people live by their conscience so that they don't have to memorize like 613 laws plus however many were in the Talmud or whatever? Like in order to like just let people live according to their conscience. But, you know, you don't have to work. You can just like try to make the world a better place by like spreading your views, but not believe that people are going to hell if they don't follow them. Just like, you know, having that discussion with people and not being a
and
supremacist
like I think
about
like
it.
there's still like obviously there was a reason that like the Jews had their tradition and there was a reason for all of those laws, that like when I look at it I do see it as like something that like can be good and beautiful, and like in the ways that they try to, like what they try to do with that is show the world what God is like, but also like, I mean, a lot of what Paul does is say like, hey, not everyone needs to follow this, but like Jews, we can still be like an example of this, whatever. I don't know. I don't want to like argue theology with people because at the point I'm at right now, like, I don't know, like, I don't want to be another person who just says I've got the right interpretation when it's like, who knows? And honestly, I don't really care that much right now. But so after some of those acrobats, like all of the questions of like free will and stuff just keep almost going in circles for a while of like, oh, what about this verse? Oh, but what about this verse? And like the arguments will just like continue on forever. But it'll always seemingly come back to the idea that like you've been given a choice to believe in God or not, and like worship Jesus or not. And if you do not choose that, then like you're done for.
Right. Because we had that discussion. We went through the acrobatics, and when you tried to stick the landing, both of your legs snapped in like multiple different places and you just collapsed. Like that's like that was the end result of that series of acrobatics to get to a point where we can justify like
and
the
that's
whole
also
free will
because
thing
I
under
was doing so many
Christianity.
flips and I was so high in the air to perform that many flips that by the time I hit the ground, I was like basically skydiving at that point. I got a lot of flips in, that's for sure. But my
Yeah,
legs.
essentially. Micah's legs are sticking out of his shoulders right now.
What is this? What are we doing?
I don't know. I don't know why we're like this. We're brothers. It's this
Oh
is
my
what
gosh.
happens.
Anyway, hey, that's good.
I'm just in a weird mood today. No, but like, yeah, I think, yeah, I do enjoy like the free will discussion and discussing like to what extent free will exists or like
Yeah.
how we make decisions like that. Because I think that my free will interpretation is going to be closer to Hart's interpretation just because of how eloquently he put it and how sarcastically British he is. He he just won me over with that. Oh, the book is free on Hoopla, by the way. It's like I'm like telling people to read a book. Like you can just listen to the audiobook
Hoopla,
for free on Hoopla.
amazing
The narrator is
app.
great.
All you need is like a library card and you can get one for free online. You put it in and then you have access to like hundreds of audiobooks. You get like 10 books a month, which is like nuts because Audible you get like 2. And it doesn't
More
have
than I
every
read,
book.
yeah.
Like Audible would have a lot more
Right.
books than this, but it has some good books on there. So like free little throw ad there that was not paid by anybody. I just love Hoopla. I've listened to so many books on that.
Right, yeah. Not a sponsored podcast, but like, yeah, Hoopla's, I mean, it's just an amazing service and it's super communist. So obviously I'm in favor.
Oh my gosh. Oh, because it's free, because it's yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well,
Yeah,
because
that's
it's
good.
freedom of
And hey,
information,
we need that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, to come back to the topic at hand. So now we've kind of like gone
Right.
to like both sides. So like kind of where I fall, which I think, I mean, I don't know. Like I think this is a kind of a balance of both, and people are gonna lean one way or another. Is like limited free will. Like we all have basically like we have choices that we can make, but those choices are limited and they are influenced by external forces. So it's kind of a mix of like the determinism of like you are influenced by external forces, but you also have some free will, but you don't have full free will because you can't choose things that are not choices. Like if you go to Aldi,
Right.
then you're gonna have like maybe 2 brands of things you can buy as far as like I don't know, cereal. Well, just I don't know why cereal is just on my mind. But like if you go to Walmart, you're gonna have a lot more
Yeah,
options.
apparently.
And so like choosing to go to Aldi actually limits your choice because now you only can choose what is inside of Aldi. And it's a small store. If you don't know what Aldi is, it's like amazing and you should definitely. It's a grocery store that's like super awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of small, but like it has everything that you'd need really.
Yeah.
And
it's super cheap too.
Everything's just like a little bit cheaper than like Walmart. So like, but also like Aldi is not objectively the worst place to work in America.
No, it's a good place to work. And like
they actually treat their employees pretty well from what I've seen.
Yeah, their business model is really smart, and that's why they're able to have low prices is because they have like 5 employees run the whole store, and like that's it because of a lot of factors. But I don't want to sit here and talk about
it's also kind of small.
Aldi.
Yeah,
It also is
we
small.
can.
Yeah, they limit your choice, but like they have
we can
everything
chill
you need.
for Aldi on another episode.
Yeah, we'll have an episode just on grocery stores and cereal.
Yeah, that sounds great. Except for the cereal part, I actually don't like cereal. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, interesting. I like cereal, but like it makes me sick sometimes. Like it's just a lot of milk. It's a lot of liquid.
You mean because you're like lactose intolerant?
Well, even with alternatives, it's still like hurts my stomach. I don't know what it is. Okay, so limited free will.
Let's talk about free will. Yeah, we got like 30 minutes left in this bad boy or whatever.
Or however long we go.
Yeah.
So like there definitely is an element of like external factors influencing the choices we make. Like if I grow up in all of my friends all of my friends have a specific type of shoe or like specific brand of clothing that they wear, and like I want to be like my friends, then like I am free to choose whatever shoes and clothes that I want, but my choice is going to be heavily influenced by those factors. Like I'm probably going to lean towards the things that I see my friends wearing that I think are cool, because like I see it on my friends and like I want to be like my friends. So like my will is not 100% free because it is influenced by other things. And even though I might have the choice of a lot of things, I'm going to naturally lean towards certain things because of my environment, because of external factors.
Yeah.
Does that start like
Do you want to zoom in on that? Because like there is also deterministic kind of analysis of that.
Oh, okay.
Because we can like kind of, now that we've like done so much discussion, we can kind of zoom in and like discuss like the differences there between the two philosophies.
Sure, yeah.
Like the determinist would probably ask, like let's just say you make a decision, like you're with your friends, all of your friends wear some zapatos de Nike, which means Nike shoes in Spanish.
Yeah. Nice.
And you decide, no, I'm going to wear Pumas or something like that. The determinist would ask not like what happened in that moment, but what led up, like what circumstances in your life led up to you deciding to contradict your friends in that decision. Like,
yeah.
Like were you raised to like kind of stand out? Like, is that just the circumstances of your life cause you to become more of an independent person as opposed to a conformist? You know, like that. So it's really an impossible question to answer, which is why to me it's more of an intellectual exercise.
Yeah.
But it's like the circumstances leading up to that moment determine how you behaved in that moment, basically.
Yes. And like that's where like I think I would want to ask all those same questions, because like there is a trail behind that decision of like other decisions and other circumstances that like you said would make you want to contradict, be unique in your choice. But I still believe that like you still have the power over that decision. And like yes, that decision is heavily influenced by other things in the past or whatever, but you still have the power of that decision.
Right.
Does that kind of, so like,
no, I see your point there, and I'm not going to contradict you, because just like my approach to Christianity, I'm not trying to like take any power away from anybody's decisions in the same way that I don't like try to deconvert anybody.
Yeah.
And like make them stop believing the thing. It's just more like posing questions for people to think about, because I think that there's like a heavy amount of usefulness in seeing the power of your own decisions that can really drive you to, you know,
for sure,
to make decisions.
Yeah.
So I think that's
definitely
cool.
And yeah. And so like, I mean, I guess if you were to put a spectrum of like full determinism and then fully free will, I would probably fall like, let's say that determinism is 1 and free will is 10 on a scale, then I would probably fall at like a 3 or 4, where I'm like, I believe in free will, but more like your free will is heavily influenced by other things. So it's like more determinist side, where like, you know, the factors led up to where you are, but still there's some free will in there.
Okay, fair
like
enough.
That's where I would fall, at least.
I reject the analysis entirely, because that was an analysis that was always going to happen from the creation of the universe.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just kidding. I actually don't super know where I fall on that scale, because I haven't thought about it that deeply. I just, to me, so like basically the reason that I call myself a determinist is because I don't believe in a multiverse, so I don't believe like a lot of people justify the free will thing by saying every decision creates like a new reality. There's people say that there's evidence to support that. There's not, as far as I've seen. Like it's pure speculation, science fiction.
Yeah.
And so I don't believe in some sort of a multiverse. So I just believe that we've been headed in a straight line that's always like everything that happened on it. If we were to go back and restart at the beginning, all of those things would happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And there hasn't been anything that's convinced me that it wouldn't happen any differently.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I fall into the determinist category.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. Aside from that, I don't really care.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that the only way that I could be convinced of like a limited free will is if I was shown that there's something that acts from outside of our understanding of the universe as it is, and how like how scientifically organized it is, to say that there's like an amount of chance played into consciousness that cannot possibly be determined by external circumstances towards somebody. So I could be convinced, and it's very possible that there's evidence out there that I haven't found that just like proves me dead wrong. But I haven't looked for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get into so back whenever you said since the creation of the universe, that made me think, well, how does believing in God or a God factor into this whole thing? Because I feel
think if a God exists, free will does not exist.
Wow. Okay.
Just
and
that's my no nuance November take.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is an argument by a lot of by a lot of people, is like if God exists, and but let's assume this is a God that is all knowing, all powerful, I guess even just like those two things, and one that has set the universe in motion. A lot of people will say, well, okay, if God already knows everything that's going to happen, you don't actually have free will, because that those choices are already like set out, and like when God is like, and then especially that when God when people claim God influences certain decisions, that's like also taking away your free will, and he's like making sure that certain things happen.
Yeah.
But you just think there's no free will. Like that doesn't even take some of it. Yeah, there's just none.
Yeah, I had no nuance November. No, this argument was settled at 3 a.m. at one of my friends' houses in high school, when the smartest kid in my school had an argument with 5 of us about free will.
Oh my gosh.
And that is where all of my opinions come from. No, I think that like really what it is it comes from multiple analyses. One of them is that I can't personally conceive of a universe where an inconsistent God has created a consistent universe.
Sure. Okay.
Because the universe is observably consistent, any God that has created it, or pantheon of gods or whatever, it would have to be like a consistent set of gods.
Sure.
Because of the consistency of that God, and because of infinite regression, the God would have to be like outside of the universe and like creating the universe, forming it entirely, not just existing alongside it. The consistency would basically play into the same like scientific consistency that I see with determinism, but like even harder because it's intentional.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So essentially that's why I like just threw that out there. I was just like, no free will if there's a God. It's also, I don't like, there's also a lot of cultures where they believe in inconsistent gods. And maybe maybe like a philosopher from one of those religions could completely like destroy me in a debate on that. Who knows?
Yeah. That would be interesting.
And then that could play into free will or something like that. But like the way that I've personally conceived of it, and like the studies that I've done, the philosophy that I've looked into, I just don't see a way where like that could be a thing. What do you think about that?
Interesting. I think I somewhat agree that like if God was all powerful and all knowing, that if there was any free will, it would be virtually zero. And because that God has the power to influence everything and has the intentionality to do so, apparently,
Yeah.
to some people. And like, especially like certain things that like Paul says is very deterministic, of
Right.
like, well, God chooses to have mercy on whoever he wants, and like all these different things. Like so then it does get really interesting going from that to then people saying, well, you choose to go to hell. It's like, well, did I?
Right.
Especially
Yeah.
with the idea that
Is that
like,
possible for me to have chosen to go to hell? Like, I don't think that that's like within somebody's wheelhouse to even choose that. Like, even
no,
if I was a 10 on free will, I still don't believe that somebody could freely choose to suffer eternal conscious torment as like a
no.
punishment for incorrect beliefs. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that, for me at least, like an argument that really resonated with me um, back when I was even still a Christian is like, if God is all powerful and all knowing, God knows what will convince me that they exist. And if they choose not to convince me, that's on them. And I was like, that's a
Right.
really good point. Like, honestly, that's a good point because like there's the argument of like, well, God reveals himself to everyone, but you choose like so does God just only give you choice for that one time that he like reveals himself potentially to you? And then for the rest of the time, like he's like you're everything else is determined. You know, like that just doesn't make
Right.
any sense. That's not consistent. Especially if that God knows what would convince you and chooses not to reveal themselves in that way. It's like, well, that was deceptive. Like how is that fair? Because like that's on you. You knew what would convince me and you chose not to. And so like it does get really interesting with that. But then whenever like, at least like where I am coming to of like maybe a God that is not all powerful and a God that is not all knowing, maybe those terms are not good ways to describe what God could be, then I still think there could be free will with, I don't even want to say like God because like I feel like I've been using the term divine being a lot like in conversations with people because to me that at least doesn't denote having all power and all knowledge and all the omnis basically.
Right.
But it's something that is, I guess, spiritual and I don't even want to say all present, but maybe all present, I guess. That would be the only thing.
Yeah.
That could be an omni, I guess. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know.
I see that. And actually I checked out for the last 2 minutes. What were we talking about? You want to just put that in the bloopers at the end?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Oh my gosh.
I had something in my head to say and I lost it.
Oh no.
Okay, what was summarize the last thing that you said real quick. I'll respond to it.
Oh my. I was basically
the edibles finally kicked in. So
oh my gosh.
I'm just kidding. Opal, don't bump the mic.
Basically,
Thank you.
if in from what I am coming to, if a God exists, the only like omni that I think might apply would be like omnipresent and like this is a being that is I guess in the words of the Greek philosopher who Paul quotes, in God we live and move and have our being. Like it is like the water we swim in. It is the thing that is in all of us and is a like force that we can get in touch with. Like I don't know. Like
Yeah.
but in that it's not something that maybe even has in much intention or is it a conscious being? I don't know. Like I guess it might have to be. I don't know. If it had intention it would have to be conscious, I guess. Hey listeners, editor Micah here. As you can see, it seems that every time I try to describe my developing view of God, it kind of just starts to fumble out in really kind of mixed ways and I'm not really sure what I'm talking about, and I'm trying to use language that I'm familiar with and also kind of come up with new language to differentiate it from the things that I used to believe. So I apologize if this is very confusing as I try to kind of describe how I perceive and experience reality. Maybe someday I'll have a more concise and better way of how to describe it. But we're also talking about this great mystery of potentially a God or a divine being living and working in the world, and I don't really understand how that all works, and I don't know if there really is a way that I could fully understand how that all works, if there's anything at all. So bear with me as I continue to try to describe this and how it relates with free will and just kind of where I'm at. But, if you relate, that's cool. If you don't, then you don't. Let's just continue on with the conversation. Just wanted to throw that in there. But like I don't think that fully takes away free will necessarily, because it's not something that has I guess is fully in control of the universe. Like I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of wrote like a little short story about something like that. It was like a goddess who kind of walks through. This is just me ranting. She just like walks through like all of these strings of life that just kind of stretch infinitely in all directions, and she does her best to like pull them close to each other, to like tie people into webs that make their lives better, but like she's very limited in what she can do, and she can only see so much, and like sometimes she'll just not notice or whatever because she's like very limited in that sense. And that was more me just kind of thinking about like how our lives intersect with other people, and how like sometimes you could meet somebody and just be at points in your life where like you are not gonna connect. And like I was just kind of, I had to put that into a narrative, and then the goddess came into my head, and she's kind of like either like just a fictional goddess, or like the Holy Spirit was like the female version of God or whatever, and like all the those kinds of things. So
Nice.
like that's kind of how I represented it in my head. But yeah, I think like maybe I just got super indoctrinated in like monotheism or something like that. But I guess the way that I see God is pretty much like if a God created the universe, it has to kind of have those qualifications that we put on it.
Potentially.
And yeah, potentially. I mean,
that's
also
assuming that God
wrong.
created the universe.
Right. Yeah. There is also like, I mean, maybe a God could have been created at like the Big Bang or something like that. Who knows?
Or maybe that God just
like,
is the universe.
I think that, okay, so when I say like a God outside of the universe, I think that's kind of what I mean. So the way that I was taught to think of it was like you draw a line on a piece of paper, and then imagine that piece of paper extends infinitely in all directions. And the infinity of the paper is God, and then the line is like our reality from start to finish. So God intersects with our reality at all points in all times. And so it's not that God is like moving throughout time with us or like infinitely regressed. It's that the universe has a beginning and an end, and then God is just like on a different plane of existence where like that sort of thing is just like a physical dimension to him or to them. Or you and Christian use the they them pronouns for God all the time, and I just like haven't cared to change my pronouns for God.
That's
because
fair.
I don't talk about God a whole lot. Pearl.
I have, because
Sorry,
it's helpful
my dogs
for me
are barking
at least.
at door closed. Yeah, that totally makes sense. You talk about God way more than I do. I sometimes talk about theology on my TikTok, but like I probably post more about like communism and mental health than I do about deconstruction.
Yeah. And I feel like every time I try to describe my developing view of God, it comes out very like stumbling around in the dark, like I don't really know, which is basically how I feel. So it's a good
I think that's totally fair.
Good representation of how I am figuring this out. I'm just stumbling around like I think this is what I think. I don't know.
I had a good discussion with one of my friends last night who was talking about a Bible study that she went to, and she was not super happy with like the way that they kind of behaved about certain things. Like they were very certain that their interpretation of the Bible was correct, and that there was no other interpretation. And I think that really takes away from so much of theology to just say that somebody else's opinion can never matter, or like somebody can never explore or find new things in God. Like it's taking the unboxable and trying to put it in a very, very small box. So I think very that small. Like the best exploration of God is like that. Like I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. And like to me, it's so like how utterly arrogant to me now, from where I am now, it seems to think that like in the year 2021, after so many years, after maybe only reading the Bible in English when it was never written in English, like that you have, like you own the corner market of interpretation, and that you've
Right.
figured it out. Like you think that like you have the right answer, like above everybody who has ever studied this and like spent their whole life studying this and like even like all of this stuff. You think you got it figured out. Like to me,
Yeah,
that's a
it's
very
like that Alyssa Childers book that I read where at the end she's
yeah.
like, "Oh, hey, turns out we got it right. Good job, everybody. We can go home now.
Yeah.
Nothing,
No more
nothing to
questions.
see here.
Ask
We
questions as long as
need
you
not ask another question."
come back to this one understanding. Yeah,
That
it's very
thousands of years
narrow-minded.
of debate have finalized, and we have it right now.
Yep. In a very young
That book annoys me to no end, and Alyssa Childers actually triggers like my religious trauma.
yeah.
Actually, one of my most popular TikToks on like deconstruction is where I talk about her book.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and Christian have a lot of back and forths on TikTok because I like
yeah.
duet a lot of his videos or like
Yeah.
stitch a lot of his videos.
There you go.
But that whole book, I could just do like a book review on that, like just a solo, just like ranting about that book for like an hour.
Tear it to pieces and like
If
that
you want
was
me to just like record one for like the backlog and just you don't have something to post and you're just like, okay, let's see how this goes.
yeah. 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 And to be clear, like I do find value in people landing on a certain theology that works for them and like saying like I think this is like at least I believe and lean towards this interpretation, but like we need to not have that arrogance. And honestly, I see this in like Christians and non-Christians alike to think that you have the right one. Because I also see a lot of people critique the Bible and like, valid critiques, because there's a lot of things to critique, but they critique it from one interpretive lens as if that is the interpretive lens to critique it from.
Right.
And it's like, well, there's other ways of looking at that are not like that. And like, I hear your critique, but like you're also assuming that your interpretation is the right one, even as a non-Christian. And it's like,
right.
that's still arrogant to me. Like that's still like another form of saying like, I've got it figured out. It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't have that kind of confidence. And maybe there's a reason you have that confidence, but at least some people, I'm like, that's not maybe even a valid
I totally
interpretation.
agree with that.
So,
it especially annoys me when people talk about the Old Testament and they like just absolutely take a dump on like the Pentateuch or what, like the first 5 books.
Yeah.
And they don't they like just look at it from the point of view of like mega church pastors that they've heard, and they like to me that becomes tantamount to like cultural erasure of Jewish people.
Yeah, it is.
Because you're not looking. Pearl. Sorry, she gets annoyed when I don't pay attention to her.
Yeah.
It becomes like cultural erasure because there's absolutely fair critiques. Like I think that all of those things, like they debate it, like rabbis debate it. And actually you can be like an atheist rabbi. Yeah. Like you can study those things and like not even believe in God and like have those discussions. But like to just say like if your point is to critique evangelicalism or Christianity in general, then it's fair. But if your point is to critique the actual text, then you have to engage in proper textual critique.
Yeah.
Which would be to learn the culture. So
it's like
that's why that kind of stuff annoys me.
Yeah, it's weird. And then like a lot of people when called out on that, they get very defensive. And it's like I get it, but like
honestly, I just want people to like change their language. Like if you're going to like just adjust it so that you're not taking a dump on like an entire group of people who have also been historically marginalized, and like we literally still have Nazis in America and all over the world.
Yeah.
Like just adjust your language a little bit so that it attacks the people that you're actually trying to address and not the people that you're not trying to address, because like I know who you're trying to talk to right now.
Yeah.
It's
interesting. But yeah, we'll have to do an episode sometime talking about like interpretations of the Bible and what is even helpful for like looking at it, because like I still there was a lot in the Bible that has formed me into who I am, and that like I still find value in, though I haven't read the Bible in a while because religious trauma and things like that. And I'm trying to like heal from things. And so I'm just like not engaging with that kind of stuff. Like honestly, reading that verse today was like the first time in like probably a couple months that I've even looked at a Bible verse. besides one that people like throw in the comments because they like to try to evangelize to me. But
Yeah, for sure.
like there's still things that like I find value in and can appreciate about, like, especially the way that like Jewish culture has interpreted and has wrestled with the text. But like, where was I going with that? I understand people's aversion to the Bible and like reasons why it shouldn't work, and I don't encourage everyone to read it, but I think for some
Yeah,
people
for
it can be
sure.
helpful.
I think Gaptooth, who is, I believe, an anarchist that I follow on TikTok, he said something along the lines of, you only got this life to live, so why avoid certain texts? Like, he wasn't telling people to read the Bible. He was saying, like, read any religious or philosophical text, because
Yeah.
even religious texts were like a culture's way of interpreting the world and
Yeah,
how they came to their truths, and there's no reason to say that those cultures in their entirety were just wrong.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
you can learn from other people and like how they interpreted the world, and you can add that to your bag of philosophy that you use to conduct your life.
Definitely.
So like, I think that there, even in that, so I think that there's value in reading it and analyzing it and doing the textual critiques and everything, whether you believe or not. But also, like, read whatever you want. I don't care.
Yeah. And
So,
just,
yeah.
yeah. We'll have to talk about this sometimes, but
That was kind of a subtopic of the original thing I suggested this week. But I was really interested in Christian's thoughts on it too.
yeah.
The whole idea of like authority, like who can speak with authority on the Bible and what it means and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was like the idea that I posed originally.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll talk about, well, no, we'll definitely
Yeah,
talk about
I think
that
that's an
sometime.
important thing for like people who are deconstructing, like, because
For sure.
those questions will come up a lot with family or friends or whoever, and like, just, yeah, I think that one I will actually do research on.
Yeah.
And
Well,
like,
because
put together some coherent thoughts to be more useful, because that could actually like affect somebody's life.
yeah, and it very much becomes like, well, my pastor says this. Well, my pastor says this. It's like, well, okay, who has the authority to say who's right? Because they both claim
Right.
authority, but they both disagree now. So like, what do you do with that? So yeah, well, that's a
Yeah,
very good
it's
topic. And then
definitely,
yeah,
yeah, definitely one reason why I liked Pastor Craig back when I was still going to church, because he said something along the lines of, if I'm the only person that you get your theology from, then you're not studying theology.
yeah,
And he was like, he literally said, if I'm the only person that you're getting your biblical studies from, then you're not going to church. Like, you're just listening to one guy say his opinions.
wow,
He was basically like, you
good for
need to
him.
find other people that have like, yeah, he's a very he's definitely the kind of person that I am the last to attack when I'm like talking about Christianity, because
Yeah.
he's very much humble and like willing to admit that he doesn't know things, and like that you should not just listen to him, and that he's not like on the level where his word is scripture or whatever. So like, he seems like a really good person.
Yeah,
Is kind of where
yeah.
that comes down to.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Well, this was a very interesting conversation.
Yeah. No,
And
yeah, it was fun. I love having these discussions, especially when we have like small disagreements. I think that
yeah,
like disagreements are kind of fun.
yeah. So if you want to continue to argue with us about free will and determinism and tell us why we were completely off base in everything we said, then you can find me at Pondering Together on TikTok. And Josiah, where can they find you?
At also Pondering Together on TikTok. Just throw all your opinions at Micah.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm at Something Matters on TikTok. But if you're gonna come to my page, you can also call me like an idiot leftist or something like that. Actually, call me a liberal. Nothing will get my gears grinding harder than calling me a liberal. I'm kidding. That's a leftist joke, and Mike is blowing his nose. So
Sorry, yeah, I had to do that.
that's
yeah.
it. I've been coughing this entire podcast, and you blow your nose once. How dare you?
Oh my gosh.
No,
Anyway,
yeah, I post, like I said, I post a lot of different stuff on my TikTok, but I do
Yeah.
post like religious opinions sometimes. So
yeah.
yeah,
And if you want to maybe leave a more lengthy comment, or like, I don't know, like want to start a conversation, then you can also find our YouTube version of all of these episodes, and like just make a comment, and we'll like see, maybe we'll talk about it in the next episode or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
or leave us a review and be like, get that monotoned guy off of your podcast. I don't like listening to his voice.
Yeah, well, I will come after you if you want to come after my bro. But you can also find Christian, who was not here, and I'm sure is listening to this, but he is at Truth Voyager on TikTok, and we do have our combined TikTok of highlight reels, which we will post occasionally at Morning Ponderings on TikTok. And that's really the main ways to connect with us. So with that, everybody have a great day.
Be well and do good. Yeah, I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Do you remember the intro?
Yeah, sure. We'll go with that.
It's all right. We can do multiple takes.
That's what the editing is for.
Indeed. Okay. I still find value in, though I haven't read the Bible in a while because hashtag I'm gonna cut that out. But because of religious trauma and things like that, and I see
Whoa, that was really loud.
That was really loud.
Forgot to. It's a good thing we were at a pause there.
Yeah.
Blooper reel.